Hello, this is Brian Akers from Akers Financial Group. We welcome you to our Social Security webinar today. On today's show, today's talk will be with myself and Sam Payne from AMS. We'll be going over Social Security. Today, there's a lot of interesting topics. We'll be divided into two segments. That first segment will be for everybody. And what I mean by that is those preparing to draw Social Security and those already drawing Social Security that chose to watch the webinar. We wanted to talk about Social Security itself, about Social Security and its sustainability throughout your retirement years. And then we'll switch into some claiming strategies and cover some of the basics of early versus late when it comes to Social Security. Now, these webinars are in replacement of our expo. Our expo we used to do every spring, right after tax season. In 2021, we're not doing that. We're planning on doing one this fall. In person is also the plan, which might be hard to do, but we're going to try to make it happen. So for all those watching today for our Social Security, if this is your first time listening to one of our webinars, and we know whose first time it is, we actually have an Akers Financial blanket as a gift for you. Now that gift can be sent to you after you've listened. And of course, you got to make sure we have your information. As we go through, there's a chat box in the bottom of our Zoom webinar today. That chat box, you can talk to one of the advisors is watching the webinar along with you and is there to answer any questions you might have as we talk. The Social Security talk today will not cover everything. We've had radio shows, all kinds of talks over the years on Social Security. It comes down to it, it has to be an individual meeting. That individual meeting will help us understand where you are and how to draw. Social Security, you ought to check out ssa.gov, Social Security Administration's website. Make sure you sign up for that. There's a lot of good advice that we need to give you about Social Security, but we do thank you for tuning in today to listen to this. You also could go to our akersfinancial.com webpage under the radio tab, and you can hear a talk Sam and I had on the radio just a couple weeks ago about Social Security, which we got into a few different topics than we will today. Thanks again for listening. And now it's time for our talk on Social Security. Yes, indeed. Welcome to Social Security, our webinar this week. Today, we have a very special program and we look forward to talking with you. I invited Sam Payne to talk with us today. So let's start out with some basic housekeeping information. And that is I need to tell you about Akers Financial Group and how we're licensed. Many of you know that we're licensed stockbrokers through Kalos Capital. We're registered investment advisors through Kalos Management. We're also insurance agents. So myself, Jeff, Alex, and Bernie are all licensed in this manner. Now, we also have some paraplanners and assistants that have gotten some of these licenses already. So as Akers Financials grow, each and every one gets licensed as they give advice to the clients. Now, our special guest today is Sam Payne. You've seen him at our expos that we've had. Sam Payne, here's your slide. Can you explain your history a little bit and a little bit about your licensing?
Yeah, well, thank you, Brian. I've been in the industry well over 30 years. I'm not going to age myself, but it's well over 30 years as both an insurance agent, investment advisor, broker-dealer, registered rep, a lot of experience. But today, I want to talk about my experience with Social Security. I'm what's called a National Social Security Advisor. It's certification that's provided by the NSSA. And that certification is required to be able to talk to people from their perspective about Social Security. It revolves around everything to deal with Social Security, how to calculate benefits, the nuances of Social Security, how Social Security interacts with Medicare. All those things are part of the certification. So for today's conversation, we're sticking to Social Security, understanding Social Security.
Absolutely. And so we have a lot to cover. The first part of our talk is going to be for those that are already in Social Security and already drawing, and for those that might draw in the future. But we want to make sure those that are already drawing, we put this information first so that when we switch over to how to do claiming strategies, you can actually turn the video off if you like to. But we want to make sure that we divide this seminar, this workshop into two different segments. So let's go ahead and begin. I wanted to bring up the first thing, and that is I have a client of mine, a new client of someone I've known a long time. He brought in a package where he saved all of his Social Security statements over the years. And I thought of some very interesting information. So this is a statement that he brought in from October 1998. So we're talking, was that 23 years ago? And what I want you to understand is that this is some information that Social Security has been putting on their statement for many, many years. This will help us understand some of the concerns that people have when it comes to Social Security and Social Security sustainability. Just back in 1998, this is what they said. It says, remember, Social Security can be an important part of your financial future. Whether you're young, old, male, female, single, or married, it can help you if you need it most by paying you benefits when you retire or disabled, or even if somebody passes away. Some people are concerned that Social Security won't be there in the future. The program has changed in the past to meet the demands of the times, and it must do so again. Today, we are working to resolve long-range financing issues to ensure the future generations of America can count on the same financial protections from Social Securities as generations did. Now, this is an important piece to understand that this is history. Sam, Social Security started, what, 1935? Is that right?
It started in 1935, and this is an interesting little excerpt you put in here. And I just hope people remember it's an important part of your financial future is what they're saying here.
Absolutely. It says an important part. And then what we're going to find is how Social Security has changed their language in these estimates. So some of you might have copies even further back. Send me a copy if you have one. It'd be neat for my history. Let's go on to 2005, August 16th, 2005. And so what we see here is for more than 60 years, so America had kept the promise of security for its workers and their families. Sounds like a political quote, but I'm reading the Social Security statement. The Social Security, and it says that, but now the Social Security system is facing serious future financial problems, and action is needed to make sure that your system is sound when today's younger workers are ready for retirement. This back in 2005, they're saying there's 36 million Americans aged 65 or older. Social Security retirement benefits are funded by today's workers and their employers who jointly pay Social Security taxes. Just as money they paid into Social Security was used to pay benefits to those retired before them. Unless action is taken soon to strengthen Social Security, this is in 2005, it says in just 12 years, which would be 2017, we'll begin to be paying more in benefits than we collect in taxes. Without changes, by 2041, the Social Security Trust Fund will be exhausted. By then, the number of Americans 65 or older expected to double. So double would be over 72 million. And at that point in 2041, back in 2005 was saying that people will be getting 74% on the dollar of their scheduled benefits. What's your thoughts on this comment just 16 years ago, Sam?
It is interesting that just 16 years ago, they start setting the stage. They start setting the stage for what may be coming in the future, and they continue building upon that stage, recognizing, of course, that Social Security was never intended to be a retirement program. It was truly designed to pull seniors out of poverty. And when Social Security was established, you and I have had this conversation in 1935, the full retirement age was 65, yet the mortality rate was just under 60. So most people were never expected to even claim Social Security. Today, that is a completely different picture, as you're going to find out coming up.
Yeah, this next slide I'm going to show everyone is from 2010. 2010 August, they sent this out to my client. Basically, it's this agreement from 1935 is when Social Security started. And here it says that Social Security is facing serious financial problems, and action is needed soon to make sure the system will be sound when today's younger workers are ready for retirement. In 2016, this is basically projecting out that we'll be paying more in benefits than we collect in taxes. Without changes by 2037, the Social Security Trust Fund will be exhausted. There'll be enough money to only pay 76 on the dollar of scheduled benefits. We need to resolve these issues soon to make sure Social Security continues to provide a foundation for protection for future generations. So that was just 2010. The numbers were shrinking down. 2016 and then 76%. 2037 was when the trust fund would be exhausted based on those changes. And then there was some Social Security changes back in I forgot, it was 2014, 2015.
15, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and then those changes did help the projections of Social Security, and we're going to see that in the most recent benefit statement that was provided by the same client. Here in August of 2020, it says Social Security benefits are not intended to be your only source of income when you retire.
Mhm.
On average, Social Security will replace about 40% of your annual pre-retirement earnings. You will also need other savings, investments, pensions, retirement accounts to live comfortably when you retire. This sure sounds like a disclosure, Sam. What do you think?
It does sound like a disclosure, and it's a disclosure they should have been putting on all along so that people would be saving more for their retirement and not counting on Social Security. Social Security has been a great tool for a lot of people, but the number of people who are counting on it as a sole source of income is almost, it's scary. The other thing I would say is it's interesting how the projected went from 74 cents to 76 cents. And I think the most current ones are 79 cents. So at
Yes.
least the amount that they're going to give us is going up a little bit if there's any silver lining.
Right. So on this screen here, the 40% of your annual pre-retirement earnings is based on sort of a middle income type salary. The
Right.
lower your income is, you'll be able to replace more and more of it with Social Security. But the higher your income is, Social Security will not be at 40% of your pay. It'll be a lot less. So when we're looking at financial planning and we're bringing Social Security into the conversation, understand that Social Security is part of it. And if you're already drawing Social Security, you need to know what you have and how it's going to last. The reason we want to talk about this first is about the sustainability of the benefits you're already drawing. We're going to get more into that in just a moment. But we want to also explain to the younger people that are not drawing yet that the key ingredient is this, is you have to decide when to draw. And one important variable might be, will Social Security be around the exact same way it is now to your own future? And that will actually dictate some of your decisions, maybe to draw a little earlier if needed. Let's move on to the second page of this same estimate that was given to my client. Here with an asterisk, they add it to the actual benefit page of the statement. So in smaller writing, it says your estimated payment benefits are based on current law. Current law. Congress has made changes to the law in the past and can do so at any time. The law governing benefit amounts may change because by 2035, the payroll taxes collected will be enough to only pay 79% of scheduled benefits. So here they've added in some other disclosures, such as the law can change. This is almost like a company saying that your pension might change, and then a few years later they come and change your pension, and then they say, oh, we told you so.
Yep.
So we as financial advisors are recommending that you do not ever count on Social Security only for your retirement. If you're drawing Social Security, there's a lot of aspects that we need to think about. And that's what we're going to get into the next here, Sam. Do you have any comments on this slide before I switch into the next part of our program?
No, you hit it on the head. It's almost like they're setting the expectation by beginning this announcement several years in advance. If you look at
Absolutely.
current numbers, the most current numbers from last year, January of last year, those dates are quite a bit closer, as this slide shows.
Right. So this here is when could Social Security Trust exhaust their reserves? Can you explain some basic things about what is Social Security Trust Fund, and what does the word trust fund mean?
Well, a trust fund, what in most scenarios, a trust fund is where you put dollars that are then
Oh,
earmarked for that specific purpose in the future.
yeah, that's good. Oh,
And
good.
that's what Social Security was supposed to be doing. But that trust fund, for whatever reason, too much money paid out or whatever, that trust fund is starting to be in a situation where it will have negative cash flows. In other words, more money coming in or more money going out than coming in. Payroll isn't generating enough taxes in the form of payroll premiums, Social Security premiums through payroll to offset the amount of money that they're paying out. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, very true. So this slide says this is 2021 is that first negative year,
Yeah.
because some of those old things I said before was 16, 17. I guess some of the changes they made and the fact that they're taxing higher and higher income for Social Security has allowed it to become 2021 rather than earlier. But that doesn't really change the fact on the second part here, it says 2034. So just last August, they were saying 2035, they'd have to cut benefits by 21%. And this slide is saying that 2034, 24%. So that's if someone's already drawing, do you feel that this could be true, that they could have their benefits lowered?
Typically, what has happened when the Social Security Administration or the Congress has made changes to Social Security, those who are currently drawing, those who are currently participating, benefiting from Social Security are grandfathered in typically. Now,
Sure.
there's no guarantee that's going to happen in the future, but that has been historically what has happened. And that then causes guys like you and me, advisors, to rethink maybe waiting till age 70 to claim a benefit that might be reduced by 24% anyway. So there is a lot up in the air. The only other thing I would add to this slide is that projection for 2021 negative cash flow was pre-COVID.
Okay.
And if you can think of the number of jobs that were lost in COVID, and if you understand how Social Security is funded using Social Security premiums paid through payroll tax,
Right.
pretty easy to understand that the funding for 2020 has got to be substantially reduced, which could in fact accelerate these dates.
Right. There's a lot of things that could accelerate the trust fund going down. So this side is saying that it should be totally exhausted by 2065. Now, some of those things we want to talk about rather quickly would be things such as increased longevity.
Yeah. How did we get here? Why are we in this position? Well, like we said earlier, the program was originally designed in a time frame in our history where the average mortality rate was lower than the retirement age, and so it wasn't intended to pay for a long period of time. Well, today we are, as a society, living longer, no question about it. And when you claim at 62 or 65 or 63 or whatever age, and you live for 20 to 25 years, I don't think the actuaries figured that in when they were determining the amount of premiums that needed to be collected to be able to keep this a solvent situation. So at the end of the day, we are absolutely living longer, thereby causing premiums or payments to be extended longer, reducing the trust fund.
And then lower birth rates in general has been another reason that there's less people to be out there earning to pay Social Security taxes itself, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so these are things that cause Social Security, the funding of the annual Social Security budget to be going down, is lower number of people. Now, there's also lower immigration, that is people that are actually paying Social Security. That's a political comments, but.
Well, what we talk about here is legal immigration. This country was built on not just birth rates within our country, but others coming from other nations to work and pay into the system and be participants in our society. It's about legal immigration, but immigration is one way to offset the low birth rates. But if you have lower immigration, you're not offsetting the lower birth rate, so you don't have as many people come into the workforce to be able to pay the payroll taxes.
Exactly right. And so as politics change, the sad thing is that I think neither party over the last 30 years have really looked at Social Security and made that a priority in making it a sustainable piece of the benefits for our seniors. So as we're talking about Social Security today, we're talking about some concerns people have. Generally, there's a lot to this. There's the political inaction that's occurred over the last few decades. We saw back in the 1990s, they're already talking about some concern of the financial future, but then nothing really was addressed. There's been some small changes. They basically extended FRA, full retirement age, to 67. That's one of the reasons that the numbers lasted a little bit longer. They pushed people out a little bit later. Go ahead.
Yeah, and if you think of political inaction, think of this as an incredible political hot potato. I mean, you have the boomers, that boomer generation that's working its way through our society. We're at the back end of that. And that boomer generation had substantial political clout, whether it's Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter. They had substantial political clout, and they've been paying into this. And so that has been a substantial hot potato. Unfortunately, nobody's willing to make, or has been willing to make up to now, the hard decisions, and we continue to see that in our political environment. Just that there are decisions that need to be made, like it or not. Otherwise, things could get really bad in the future at some point. But those decisions are just not something that are willing to be made right now.
It's hard. It's hard to make cuts anywhere. And the hardest part, I think they're going to make cuts to people who are not already drawing. So those already drawing, I think they're going to try their hardest to maintain that benefit, but change the people younger than baby boomers, change when they can start. Like right now, you generally can start at the early age of 62. I think they're going to adjust that up. I think 67 is full retirement age now, and that might even change in the future, but we'll have to see as things occur. But investments also do calculate for the trust, the Social Security trust. So if they're not earning interest off of bonds, because a lot of the federal debt is the Social Security Trust Fund. And so it's actually more than they owe China, they owe Social Security. And they're paying low interest rates now, which how can you grow Social Security when it's making low interest?
Right.
And then another little topic is like you were saying earlier about COVID-19 and its effect on Social Security.
Yeah.
Now, Social Security does have a lot to do with life expectancy, and COVID does affect life expectancy a little bit, as we've seen so far since last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, mortality amongst the older ages, obviously, where that 65 plus age group was much more affected by COVID-19 than the rest. And that's, I mean, I hate to say it, but that will have a little bit of an impact on Social Security, but you still didn't have the payroll taxes. I think the biggest thing that I want people to recognize is that claiming at 62, if indeed we're living longer, it only makes sense that we should have a later early claiming age and a later full retirement age. Again, thinking back that when it was first designed, most people would never live to the full retirement age. Here, we're living well into our mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s. And so if you claim at 62, you could be claiming for 30 years on Social Security, basically the same 30 years you paid in, as well as everybody else. And so I think having the expectation and recognizing that it only makes mathematical sense to extend the early claiming days and the full retirement age that just makes sense. It's going to happen. Just don't know when.
Exactly right. There's going to have to be some ways of having possible solutions to solving this.
Yeah.
Social Security, they have actually been playing around with the cost of living over the years as one of the solutions. And that's actually postponed the downfall of Social Security by a couple of years because they've been controlling how fast it rises. So in basic financial planning now, we do not put Social Security with an inflation rate. So we believe that once you start drawing Social Security, it's going to stay rather flat. One of the reasons is that your Social Security increase, they are allowed to take only that amount of increase off of your Medicare premium that you pay. So they can raise Medicare only up to the same inflation rate they give you on Social Security. So I think they're going to be giving Medicare increases, giving cost of living, and basically taking away the increase through that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's versions of things that are taxes. I hate to see Social Security taxes going up. They extended Medicare tax unlimited over the last decade or so, but Social Security taxes have been relatively flat. There was a couple times in history where they stopped Social Security contributions for a little while. That was like after the 2008 financial crisis. That's one of the times they did that. I didn't understand it because that was very short-sighted, but that does affect Social Security greatly. Any other possible solutions that you see, Sam?
No, the one thing they're talking about in the way of tax increases is right now you've got a payroll tax that stops around, I think it's 130 something thousand.
Yeah, 142.9 for 2021.
Okay, so 142.9, anything over 142.9 that you make, you don't pay Social Security taxes on. I expect that they're going to increase that number. And there is talk about creating what's called a donut hole, that maybe from 150 to 215, you don't pay Social Security taxes on that income. But once you get above 215, you start paying again,
Yeah.
either at the same or a slightly reduced rate to collect more premium for the higher earning individuals. So
Right.
there are a lot of ways they can apply tax increases to help offset. Now, even I think I think Biden or somebody has a suggestion that you don't have a payroll tax, you include the funding for Social Security in a use tax. And so there are ways they can do it, but it's gonna be done. Just question is when and what's it gonna look like.
Right. I do think they're going to add means testing into Social Security benefits. You're going to pay in your whole life, and if you're almost too successful, they could take it away.
Yeah.
And so that could be a version of benefit cuts.
Yeah.
And this is our final part of this one section, is that benefits could be cut for the younger, is what we're trying to say. And then for future, if you have saved and have higher income in retirement, you might see Social Security go down, especially if through taxation or some other type of pullback.
Yeah.
So this is the first section of our Social Security talk, is about the sustainability of Social Security. Hope you understand our thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts on the sustainability of Social Security, Sam?
Yeah, I think one thing I would say is when it comes to sustainability of Social Security, I think people need to put themselves in one of three groups. The first group is those individuals we're talking about here who are already receiving. Pretty good likelihood, not a guarantee, but pretty good likelihood they're going to be grandfathered in. The second group is those that are substantially close or relatively close to that retirement, to claiming Social Security and trying to make those decisions. That's a separate group, and they have different things to think about. And the third is that young person who's just living life, just getting going in their career and paying into Social Security. That's a different message for them altogether. So three different groups. Which group do you fit in? Reach out to Akers Financial and have a discussion about your specific group and what are the best actions for you to take.
All right, so this first segment was for those already drawing and those thinking about drawing. I think it was a great beginning of our Social Security talk. And what we want to do and get into next is about strategies. All right, Sam, we're going to now get into Social Security strategies.
Yep. And so the main thing to recognize is, as an American citizen, you have participated in Social Security, and most of you have paid into it for well over 30 years, maybe 40 years. Now let's figure out how to optimize or maximize those benefits, recognizing that for a lot of people, unfortunately, that is their largest assets. And so the questions we get asked most often are things like, will it be there for me? And how do I maximize my benefits? Well, we just talked about whether or not it will be there for you. So we've answered that question to the best we're able to today. So let's talk about how do we maximize those benefits? And let's talk about specifically the issues we're going to talk about. We're going to cover things like, Social Security, the basics and the changes. We're going to talk about when and how to claim and the consequences and benefits of claiming early and claiming late. We're going to talk about how Medicare premiums are included and the effect of that. And then the last thing is the biggest thing, especially for couples when one passes away, is Social Security and taxes. So let's start with throwing to the audience a quick quiz. And if you'd like, think of your answers and type them in the chat box. But when was Social Security originally established? Now, I answered that earlier in the earlier section, but it was established in 1935. And again, it was originally established to lift seniors out of poverty. And when was the first Social Security check sent out? I think it was 1936, if I remember correctly. And then what's the next question? It is, what was the full retirement age at that time? The full retirement age was 65 when Social Security first came out, but mortality was a little less than 60 years old. Again, like we said earlier, the average American never was intended to live enough to start claiming the Social Security benefits that they were paying into. So the question you have to ask yourself is, if you've been working for 30 years and you're at that point where you'd like to retire and you want to start figuring or determining how and when to claim Social Security, you really have some options available to you. And those options are all based on a very important term. It's actually three letters that you see quite often: PIA, primary insurance amount. In Social Security, the primary insurance amount is the premium or the benefits you would receive if you claimed your benefit at your full retirement age. And everything else is based on that primary insurance amount. If you claim early, the amount you will get is based on that primary insurance amount. If you claim late or delay your claiming, the amount you would get is based on that primary insurance age. If your spouse has a benefit available to them, that's based on primary insurance ages. If you have a divorced spouse and a survivor, it's all based off of that. So that number is incredibly important. You can get your primary insurance amount by looking at your retirement benefit. If you haven't done so already, I suggest you get onto the Social Security government website, ssa.gov. And if you haven't, register for your own account. If you do that, you can get in, look at your own benefit statement, and you'll see your benefit statement. It'll have your benefit at age 62, early retirement age. You'll see your benefit at full retirement age, which is your primary insurance amount. You'll see your benefit at a delayed age, which typically is age 70. You'll see a family benefit and a survivor benefit. So it's important, if you haven't done so already, to go to ssa.gov/my statement, create an account. Now, when you go to create that account, they may ask you some questions that are a little strange, like, did you own a Toyota pickup in 1967 or something? That's how they know it's absolutely you. So don't think it's so strange, as be thankful that they're taking all due diligence to make sure the information they're giving is to the person they should be giving it to.
If this has a lot of important questions I'd like to ask. One of them is, we need to set this account up prior to drawing. And then when somebody wants to draw, how early should they be going to do the application for Social Security?
Yep. They need to be going at least 3 months in advance.
And then Social Security right now, they're highly recommending, I mean, really highly recommending that you go to the website. So by setting up this account in your name, you then can check your record, but then the next thing you got to do is you can begin the process of actually applying. And you need to do that 3 months before you want to start drawing. It'll take that long to get that check.
Yeah, getting that first step out of the way is always a good thing, and doing it early is always better.
Absolutely.
So when you're thinking about whether or not you want to claim at 62 or 63, 65, 67, whatever age, there are some considerations you really need to take to heart. And this is the kind of things you would be discussing with Brian and Jeff and Alex at Akers Financial is, will you be working after age 62 and before your full retirement age? And if so, does it make sense to claim? And we'll probably touch on why it may not make sense in just a little bit, but that's a consideration. That's something you ought to take into consideration. Next thing is, are you healthy? Do you have longevity in your family? Is your spouse healthy? And do they have longevity? These are important considerations. Third is, are you currently married? How long have you been married? And were you previously married? And how long and how many times? Because those are things that you should take into consideration. So it's not a one answer for everyone. There is not an answer. Everybody should claim at 62, like some CPAs would say, or everybody should claim it for retirement age, or everybody should wait till age 70. That is not a proper answer. Everybody has their own unique and distinct plan that they need to follow. I think, Brian, you guys do a great analogy of the financial fingerprint, and that your fingerprint is unique and distinct from the person next to you. Well, whether or not you should claim or when you should claim is unique and distinct to you. It's not a cookie cutter thing.
Absolutely. The Social Security decision has a lot of different pieces to it. Part of it is, do you need that money? And whenever you need that money and you're not currently working, it might be the right time, depending on your longevity. The longevity and health is a big issue, but trying to plan for now and the future all ties in to when to draw this Social Security. The sad part in America is over 70% of people just draw at 62 because they're 62. And they don't draw because it's the right thing to do. We want you to understand your own situation. And in your own situation, you need to make sure you're calculating what is best. You need to know when to draw early or to draw late. Now, these are some great slides you have coming up here about drawing early versus late, Sam.
Yep. And before we get into that, you kind of alluded to the importance of understanding whether you're going to work prior to full retirement age, and that there is what's called an annual earnings test. If you exceed a certain amount of earnings on an annual basis, that you're working and earning income and still claiming Social Security, some or all of your Social Security could be taken away. So if indeed you're earning over, what is it this year, Brian? Is it at 17,000?
18,960. So I call
18,000.
that 19,000. That's in my book.
So if you're earning over $19,000 in a job as a result of your pay, then it may not make sense, probably doesn't make sense to claim Social Security, because they'll take your benefit away. Now, that benefit is not always, it's not gone forever. They will recalculate your Social Security benefit at your full retirement age and factor in the quarters or the months you didn't get a benefit because of earnings. But it just goes to show that there is more to it than just claiming at 62 and expecting you're going to get it. So what if you did claim early versus claiming late? If you claimed early from your full retirement age, well, let's put up a synopsis here. So there's a 94% difference for most individuals, assuming a 2.6 inflation estimate and a 0.3% cost of living adjustment, a 94% difference between claiming early at 62 and claiming late. And that difference is the monthly benefit that's payable to you for life. Let's put some numbers to it. If indeed you had a benefit, what's the full benefit in this one, Brian? Does it show on there?
It's $2,000.
Okay, so a $2,000 benefit, your full retirement age, that's your primary insurance amount. Remember we talked about PIA, primary insurance amount is your full retirement benefit, the benefit you would receive at your retirement age. This analysis, this example shows somebody who with their retirement age is actually 66. So if they claimed early, they would have a 75% reduction or 25% reduction in that benefit at age 62. That 62 benefit would be $1,500 a month, and it would be for life. That would never go up. It wouldn't go up because, well, it could go up if you had some earnings, but no. Typically, it won't go up. It's $1,500 a month. It's locked in. And there's a reason why you wouldn't want to do that. But let's look at, what if you said, you know what, I really don't need the money. I'm going to work till I'm 67 or 70 years old anyway. I'm healthy. I love my work. And you don't claim at 62. You don't claim at 66. You claim at a later age. What if you waited till age 70? And really, you don't want to ever wait till past 70. But if you waited to age 70, your monthly benefit would be $2,640, a 32% increase over the 2,000, but a 94% difference between the 1,500 to the 2,640. Now, there's an important point here. The majority of married couples up until a few years ago tended to claim at 62. And some of the analysis showed that the spouse, oftentimes the female, didn't have the same earnings record. And so their benefit was substantially less. And so the best benefit they had available to them was a spousal benefit, which isn't bad. But if you claimed at 62 and you passed away early, the survivor benefit is based on that early benefit, not necessarily the 2,640. So you really want to make sure that you're not just thinking of you, but thinking of the family and making sure you got the best benefit available to both parties. Does that make sense, Brian?
Absolutely. This early versus late is true financial planning. So understanding that if you don't save money and you need income, Social Security might be your only option. The sad part is that the answer might be you need to work longer, and because of your bills. We believe strongly in financial planning to a point where when you retire, we want you to have no bills, no debt. By having no debt, you then can control your income. By controlling income like Social Security, you can control taxation. All very, very important when we're talking about the Social Security decision of early versus late and what strategy to do. Now, the way the rule works nowadays is when you go in to draw Social Security, let's use a husband and wife, and let's say that one of them makes less than the other, and the one that makes less goes in to apply. When they go in to apply, they get their benefit, even though their spouse makes more money, but because that spouse isn't drawing, that person doesn't have an option to draw half of their benefit,
Mhm.
but they can draw early and get a payment. Now we're doing this a lot at FRA Day, which is right at 66 to 67 if you're born in the late 50s. If you're born in the 60s and beyond, your FRA, your full retirement age, is 67 now.
Yep.
Now, the crazy thing when it comes to planning is about income need. It's also going to be about what else are you doing? If we want to do Roth conversions, or we want to sell some capital gains at a low capital gain rate, we might recommend not to draw Social Security to get your income really low during your 60s, and then we can take more out at 70.
Yep.
Now, this all gets into the calculation is your health, and are you working or not? If you're very healthy and think you'll live into your 80s, we think waiting does make sense. I know we began this talk today with a long segment on Social Security trust and how they're going to have to change benefits in the future. We believe that America will pay the core benefits that are provided in the law here. I think there will be tweaks and changes to make it last longer. Ultimately, 15 years from now, there might be a time when they're going to have to make some very tough decisions. I think that'll be made on younger and younger Social Security people in the future.
Yep.
So Social Security benefits itself is part of your retirement plan. Hopefully it's not your only part. Waiting can be an answer, but it does not have to be the answer. What are your thoughts, Sam?
Oh, I agree. I agree that years ago, we all thought that waiting to 70 made the most sense. Now, I'm not so sure about that. And I think that's something that each and every person has to determine. Like you said, what's their longevity? What's their health? What's their income? Are they going to continue to work? All those questions have to come into play. So it's not a one, again, I said before, it's not a cookie cutter scenario. One size does not fit all when it comes to Social Security.
I like to say that the one with the highest Social Security earnings income might want to wait, mainly for survivorship concerns.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's why I was speaking to the 62 when so many people have claimed at 62 the survivor benefit is reduced by 25%, which means that if you were to get a cost of living adjustment of 2% on $1,500 as opposed to 2% on $2,600, that's a major difference, and that can mean a lot in somebody's life. Not to mention the fact that survivors now are taxed differently than a married couple, and so the concerns they've got is absolutely inflation. That's a concern for everybody, whether you're if you're not a survivor in retirement, you got to worry about that. Cost of living adjustments, will they be there? How much are they? What are they going to do to Medicare premiums? And then the biggest one, that bottom we referred to earlier, is moving from a married filing jointly to a single tax bracket, which is a substantial difference. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. And that's why we look at Roth conversions during your 60s. Because of the Secure Act of 2020, that changed your RMD, your required minimum distribution date, to 72. That gives us more time to do conversions to Roth. We believe the year 2021 might be our final great low tax year for personal taxes. We think that could change. We know it does change in 2026. So at least we have 5 years possibly of low taxes, but we think things are going to change based on all the aspects of the environment we're in when it comes to government funding, the stimulus packages, all kinds of things that have been happening, which has raised the country's debt. We truly believe that taxation is the next thing to happen in the next few years. So Roth conversions can be a great way to plan. And typically you don't want a lot of income those years. So postponing Social Security can do that. Typically we try to draw Social Security right at your FRA month, or we take it in January of the following year whenever you want to draw. So if you're 63 and you work partial year, like to June, you might not draw Social Security to January of the next year, trying to make sure you don't get forfeit points or the benefits or anything. There's a lot of aspects to Social Security, a lot of information. Today, we want to cover some basic strategies, things to think about, make sure it's going through your mind. So as we're doing financial planning together, you can understand what is best for you and your family. So we began today talking about Social Security itself and the sustainability. And then we talked about strategies. Any final closing thoughts on Social Security, Sam?
I think for everybody to understand that when it comes time to claim Social Security, you're best to work with a financial advisor who truly understands Social Security. There are a lot of advisors out there who maybe don't understand all the nuances of Social Security.
Mhm.
Akers Financial, being one who is NSSA certified, Akers Financial is a group who understands and takes into account all the different nuances. And don't listen to your neighbors. I got a great example of a lady at a cocktail party, and the guy that she was busy with said, "Oh yeah, you've been divorced 7 years. Yeah, you can claim Social Security off your spouse." And in reality, that's absolutely wrong. And so work with somebody who understands the rules, the limitations, and the nuances, and how to use that to your benefit in your specific plan.
Absolutely. All right, Sam, thank you very much for coming by today and helping us with this webinar for our clients. We really greatly appreciate it. Thanks, Sam. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you all for listening to our Social Security webinar today. Hopefully you learned some things about Social Security. You learned about the stability of Social Security and how it will be around and maybe a smaller version. I also should learn that Social Security cannot be your only source of your retirement income in your future. You need to plan multiple investment opportunities and set money aside for your own future so that you can win in retirement, like our radio show says. We also want you to remember to go to ssa.gov, ssa.gov, set up an account, no matter what age you are. And by setting that account up, you can look at your historic financial record. You can also check, make sure they have the right numbers, and also see your estimates for Social Security at different ages in your future. Hopefully you enjoyed our talk today. This being the end of our talk, we just want to remind first-time listeners or viewers of our webinar that we have that blanket gift for you for anybody that's new. I'll make sure you have your email so you can send that to akersfinancial.com. Make sure you get online and send that information to us. We also want you to know that you can send your registration links to other people, then they can log on after the fact here and watch the same seminar again. You can go to our website at akersfinancial.com, and on that website under webinars, you can see all of our past webinars so you can watch them. They are there and they're going to stay there for a long while. So be sure to share it and also to view more information that you need. We're also taking suggestions for the near future for other topics that you'd like us to cover. On April the 22nd, that'll be our next one. The topic will be Roth IRA, contributions, and also conversions, and why tax-free growth is the best way to invest money over time. So we'll cover Roth IRA, contributions, and conversions. All right, any other comments I can think of? Oh yeah, listen to our radio show on Saturday mornings, 11 a.m. on 105.7 The Fan. They did change their app to Audacity. Hopefully you can go there. If not, you get information from us anytime you like. Thank you for participating today in our talk. Thank you each and every one, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.